The meeting to order. Acknowledge the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's channel. Notice to virtual attendees, sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229 ended January 28, 2025, regular council meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the district channel. That the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at the Quakelet Sound Community Theatre, 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. Seeing no objection, motion carried. I do have an amendment, friendly amendment to the agenda. That's just to simply move some items around to fulfill our meeting procedure bylaw. And so if there are no objections, we unanimous consent, I'll move that the January 28, 2025 regular council agenda be adopted as amended to move items 11.1, 11.2 to 10.3, 10.4. Seeing no objection, motion is carried. Moving on to the consent agenda. If there are no objections, I'll move through unanimous consent that items 4.1 to 4.4 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held January 28, 2025 be approved and received. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Mayor's report. It was my pleasure to represent Tofino at the regional leaders meeting hosted by our MLA Josie Osborne, also Minister of Health, and our MP Gord Johns. That meeting in Port Alberni was attended by many regional leaders. It's a fantastic time to learn about all the successes and challenges each of our communities are facing individually and collectively. And I just want to say how proud I am to have Gord Johns as our MP. He's done a tremendous amount of work for all of our communities in our region. So really a big shout out to Gord and to our MLA Minister of Health, Josie Osborne. We would not be where we are today as a community with all of our successes without Josie's work, both as a mayor and MLA and minister. Really proud to sit in the same room with those two fine folks representing us in the province and at a federal level. I do want to say, one of my passions is seeing kids in Tofino learn how to swim. And it's just wonderful to see the Q&amp Community School PAC helping fund swimming lessons, and which are put on by Q&amp Community School. Caleb Harding, also a tremendous support in our community, is teaching those lessons. And there's multiple adults helping out, including our very own Bobby Lax with those swimming lessons, and Ocean Village for allowing those swimming lessons to happen at their pool. So I just very, very thankful, and it's wonderful to see. That is all for my mayor's report. Do we have public comment on agenda items, Mr. Beltran?
Thank you very much. I will now make an open call for comments to both members of the public present in the gallery and those participating online. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I will now do a calling once, calling 3 times. Calling twice, calling 3 times. We do have 2 members of the public that wish to speak.
Super. Virtually, I take it.
Yes, yes. I will allow Michael Leckie to talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
We sure can, Mr. Leckie. You've got 2 minutes, and please state your name and your address and the agenda item you wish to speak to.
Absolutely. Mayor and council, thank you for providing me with the opportunity here to speak today. My name is Michael Leckie, and my address is 1286 Lynn Road. And I am approaching here today as the architect of record for the Ice House project. It's one of the agenda items today for discussion. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of background. I understand and believe that you have a report that we've prepared regarding the current building permit application. And I wanted to appeal to council and mayor on two accounts. The first one is timeline, and the second one is water capacity. The building permit application was declined recently due to the new policy regarding water consumption. And I wanted to note that the application has been in process for approximately a year and was held up due to a servicing agreement that took quite a long time to kind of process. And secondly, that the statistical analysis that was used to determine the water consumption for the project had a fundamental flaw in it, in that the district calculated water consumption based on a 10-year period from 2014 to 2023. And during that period, the project had sat unused and fallow since my client, Wolfgang Reeder, had purchased it in 2019. So those numbers really did downskew the water consumption. This is a community-based project. It has recently been awarded a Canadian Architect Award of Merit, and we believe it would be a great asset to the community. And I would humbly request that council and mayor do reconsider the building permit application. Thank you.
Thank you, and that is great. Thanks very much for that. Next.
Mr. J. Gilden.
Golden Heights.
My name is Jay Gildenhuis, and my address is 949 Sandpiper. I'm commenting on agenda item 11.2, the official community plan amendment bylaw. As I'm sure you know, the OCP amendment under consideration tonight is related to our rezoning application for 1141 Pacific Rim, Crabapple, with the aim of developing affordable residential only rental accommodation. This process began nearly 3 years ago with the goal of providing safe, clean accommodation for staff who work at shelter, shed, and other small businesses in town. To be clear, this is not tourist accommodation, nor is it for people living out of town. It is for long-time local residents. As we all know, Crabapple has been residential accommodation for the community for over a decade. In fact, it is more than accommodation. These are people's homes. Something I didn't really truly understand, quite frankly, until after we purchased the property. And as I got to know some of the residents, we've worked hard to clean up. We've replaced deteriorated trailers, improved washrooms, upgraded wiring, plumbing, and worked with district staff to ensure it met our TUP requirements, especially related to resident safety in terms of tsunami safety. Our residents are educated on how to be prepared, grab and go kits, etc., what to do and where to go in tsunami events, for example, Industrial Way or Ocean Park. When the limits to growth policy was introduced, quite frankly, I was somewhat concerned on how that would affect our application. I now understand that the limits to growth policy supports residential housing, and that if Crabapple can reduce or maintain our water use, the policy may not apply to our application. So based on existing and planned improvements to our on-site water system, I can say with confidence that we should be able to meet this goal. I applaud this mayor and council for their foresight in protecting this valuable resource, which I'm keenly aware of. This project is one piece to improve Tofino's housing ecology. It will provide a new, safe, affordable market rental housing for local employees and hopefully take some pressure off residential neighborhoods. We remain committed to making safe, sustainable homes for the people who are integral to businesses and services that keep Tofino running. Thank you to the planning staff who have worked diligently to bring this forward. It's been a journey. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for your time and thoughtful consideration of our application. And I look forward to working together to ensure this project can move forward and benefit our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilhais. Okay, Ms. Pelcha. Anybody else signed up? That's it?
No, I'll sign up.
Okay, super. Correspondence. Correspondence. All right, 9.1, we have Mr. Dussault regarding wildlife attractants. Comments from council? Yes.
I feel like this is, through the chair, I feel like this is somewhat addressed through our attractant bylaw. I think having them asking businesses to get another accreditation when it's something that's already enforced by district bylaw is a necessary step.
Comments from council? Anyone else to comment? Another, maybe just a question for staff. Is there a review scheduled for our bylaw or our wildlife attractant bylaw anytime soon?
Through the chair, the wildlife attractant bylaw is fairly recent and was pivotal, sorry, in Tofino achieving Bear Smart status. There's no plans to review the bylaw at this time.
All right, we'll leave it at that. No other comments from council? Moving on. 9.2, Clayquot Biosphère Trust regarding Clayquot Sound Biosphère Center Storm Olson Road letter. Urging council to consider moving ahead with Olson Road storm damage. Perhaps I just look straight to staff. I believe this is addressed in our budget plans. Correct. Comments from council? Moving on. 9.3, LHAS regarding accident at Sandpiper Crescent. Comments from council? Council Stewart, jeez.
Through the chair. Yeah, I just was going to look over to staff. This has been an ongoing issue. Certainly, it's in my neighborhood as well. And I'm just wondering if I know Lisa has asked for some updates, and I do, and I know Ms. Vermont, we had spoken, and there were some updates that were provided. And there was no date on the letter, so I'm not sure if this is regarding the last issue that was there or if this is a newer one. I didn't see a date on the letter. If so. If it is a newer one, if we could please respond to the letter writer in regards to what we do, and she's well aware. But just once again, it may be our opportunity to once again contact Modi to inform them of the once again another accident at that particular location. Hence the pressure to do something.
Sure. Comments, further comments from council, maybe a comment from staff. I can invite a comment from staff on that. Carry on with letting, oh, yes, Councilor Anderson.
I believe at one time we were looking at having the speed limit lowered. Whatever, beyond to 50, beyond the place where it goes to 60 into U10. Is there any update on that? We moved, whatever, ask Modi about that and they just said no, or what, anything.
Ms. Vermont.
Through the chair.
Word on that.
When the crosswalk was installed, the speed limit was lowered to 60 shortly in advance of that crosswalk. We have approached Modi about reducing it further or putting other safety measures in place, but according to their standards, it does not meet the warrant to require such a speed limit.
I just wanted council to know that I also live in that neighborhood, and although the letter writer has spoken of 3 accidents, there's several near misses, like almost daily. And I just
Maybe just a review for council and members of the public. How does it work again with referring concerns, community concerns to OT through the district?
Through the chair. The district works closely with MODI. It is their jurisdiction. Crosswalks were installed, in consultation with district staff as well. And after some appeals by the community to have crosswalks along Highway 4. As we hear concerns, we do forward those to MODI. And so it's an ongoing point of conversation, but every time we get another letter, things that are documented or ideal, reports to the RCMP, that all helps build sort of a case for further action.
Super. So just to reassure the public that even though we don't control those things, it is efficacious to give us these letters so that we can forward. Rogers.
To the chair, to council, mayor, council. One thing to consider, if we can't get the speed limit reduced, is the removal of the crosswalk. That has been brought up by MOTT now, Mott. Has been considered as well.
Removing the crosswalk.
Exactly. Those were put in place to support the community, understanding it's a very challenging corner. So we could end up in a situation where the opportunity was to remove that to increase safety, because then people die at crosswalks because they assume they're safe. If you have to, be a frogger and get across the highway, you're a little bit more careful.
Wow. Thanks for that. Okay. Thanks. Further comments from council before we move on? Seeing none. Let's move on to 9.4. Ms. Pelton, regarding pickleball courts lighting. Comments from council? Councilor Sloman, Councilor McMaster.
I think this writer brings up a lot of good points, but I also thought it would be interesting to explore the idea of also having lights at the skate park and basketball court. I think that those folks maybe don't write as many letters, but I think that could be an asset to our recreation, and I would like to refer this to the Parks and Recreation Committee if possible.
Parks and Recreation. Okay. Councilor McMaster.
Yeah, in a similar vein, I think there's no doubt the pickleball courts are being well used, and while not completely agreeing with just lighting, I think I'd like to see the Recreation Committee look at ways how we can maximize usage of the pickleball, skate park and basketball courts in other periods besides daylight. Now, whether that is lights or covering the courts in some form or fashion, I think it's worth considering, but we also have to take into account the neighbourhood as well, who I wouldn't want to live next door to a pickleball court, even though I play pickleball. So I think we've got to look at that as well. So rather
examples of what we think works with our dark skies policy. Because I've seen some really good streetlights traveling recently, which sounds weird to talk about now. But compared to what BC Hydro puts in, then it could be a chance for us to do some work with infrastructure.
Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll look to staff, because we're in the middle of our budget process. So we're already got all our things lined up. And this, of course, is a new request. But we also have the opportunity to bring in the Recreation Committee. So staff, do we have a little input from staff, please?
Thank you, Mayor Law. It's difficult for me to say whether that would fit well within the terms of reference of the advisory committee, so I can't comment on that just now. If the letter is referred to staff, it should likely be referred to the financial planning process, because there will be financial implications for council to consider. It could come back to the next budget meeting. But I think at this time, just referring the letter to staff for consideration, we'll bring it back at the appropriate time, and appropriate meeting in the appropriate way. If it does fit well with the terms of reference of the advisory committee, we could certainly have the committee have a look at it.
Okay, I think just a blanket referral to staff at this time should suffice. Ms. Vermont?
If I may, through the chair, I will add as well that we have a recreation and parks master plan process underway. And this is the type of thing that process is looking at.
Okay, well, how about I move from the chair that the pickleball lighting be removed or be referred to staff, be brought back at the appropriate time. Does that make sense?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Master. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. 9.5, we have Wolfgang Ryder regarding the Tofino Ice House renovation project. Quite extensive letter. I'm just going to speak to this briefly because I've had the benefit of speaking a couple times with Mr. Ryder as well as senior staff on this project, and I think it would be beneficial for council to have some staff come back with a more fulsome review of the letter and the request, so that we can have a more fulsome conversation. So before we get right into this, that would be my suggestion. So I will nevertheless open it up to council for comments. Okay, seeing none, then I will go ahead and make a motion to refer Mr. Ryder's the Ice House renovation project staff for review and further discussion with council. Second by Councillor Master. Further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, 9.6, we have Ms. Marr, I believe, regarding the Tofino Harbor Authority. Now, maybe I can make another comment from the chair. We're all fairly aware that the issues at Tofino Harbor Authority, and I think that it bodes well to have a more fulsome discussion in closed. All right, any further comments from council on the agenda? Seeing no comments from council, we'll move on. Item 11.1, we have the District of Tofino Fire and Life. Oh, sorry, just a second. Sorry, missing one. What did I miss here? Sorry, I flipped over. Here we go. 10. Jeez, I just got rid of a whole bunch of line items. Presentations and reports. We have 10.1 AVICC resolution regarding financial incentives for residential rainwater catchment, and we have a presentation. Roger.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are going to look at the presentation related to a draft resolution for council's consideration to be submitted to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, which I will refer to as AVICC throughout the presentation. Having an overview of the presentation, we will start with a background, followed by benefits, AVICC guidelines, the next steps, and the recommendation to be put in front of council. On November 12th, 2024, a notice of motion was introduced, and based on that, District of Tofino staff was directed to create a report to council in relation to the AVICC resolution for financial incentives for residential rainwater catchment systems. What the report presents is seeking, through the resolution, provincial support for funding such incentives for residential rainwater catchment systems. And as we all know that many communities are dealing with such water infrastructure that are aging, and we're looking at alternative water sources and additional treatment capacities. Few benefits of residential rainwater catchment system would be reduced strain on municipal systems, as well as supporting the water conservation, providing cost savings, as well as increase resilience to drought. A part of the AVICC guidelines, a few points to be made are this resolutions needs to be endorsed by the council of the local government, has to address one specific subject, have to be directly relevant to other local governments within AVICC, and issue addressed should be province-wise if a resolution is intended to be considered for a UBCM. In terms of next steps, should council decide to endorse the proposed resolution, staff will proceed with submitting it to the AVICC for debate before the deadline of February 6, 2025. And we can have a look at the recommendation that is on the screen.
Super, thank you very much. We could open it up to Councillor Thomas.
I think this looks amazing. Thank you for the presentation and thank you, Lawrence, for all of your work on it. This is exactly what I was hoping to see. Did you need any more?
No, that's
I think it's
fantastic.
all in the report. It's incredible.
That's good, that's great. Okay, that's great. I mean, any other comments from council?
I just want to say that it's really great seeing this report and recognizing the determination and passion for the subject from Councillors Sloman and Thomas. I think it's really nice to see this coming to light finally.
Sloman, want to comment?
I think it's a great step in the right direction.
It's here, so if there's no more comments from council, who would like to read the multiple part recommendation?
I can if that does. Or
Go for
or
it.
Thomas doesn't.
Go for it.
Are you sure?
It's your turn, you get to do so.
Okay, I move that the council of the District of Tofino endorse the following resolution: submission to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities for consideration at the 2025 annual AVICC convention, whereas water security, drought, and climate change are critical issues affecting communities across the province of British Columbia, with many communities facing challenges related to aging water infrastructure and increasing demand. And whereas incentivizing the implementation of residential rainwater catchment systems can alleviate pressure on water supply challenges in drought-affected communities, therefore be it resolved that the AVICC and UBCM call upon the province of British Columbia to offer rebates or financial incentives for residential rainwater catchment systems to help increase water supply and promote efficient water use practices.
Seconded by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments from council? Being none, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks for your work on it. Okay, we have item 10.2. We have a development variance permit for 65 Nielsen Place. Mr. Shorthall.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mana Shorthall, planner one at the District of Tofino. My first time presenting to you here this evening. So I'm going to be presenting a development variance permit related to the property at 625 Nielsen Place. So a little bit of background on this property. It was rezoned back in February of 2024 from acreage residential 3 zone to a CDNP, which is comprehensive development in Nielsen Place. This was with the vision to allow for a subdivision of the property at a later stage. Once the application for a subdivision, the applicant subsequently applied for a subdivision in line with their zoning conditions. They received preliminary layout approval back in June of 2024. Following this, they got the preliminary approval on the basis that there's a couple of conditions to be met. One of those conditions is a development variance permit relating to highway frontage from 2 lots onto Nielsen Place. And then to touch on the comprehensive development Nielsen Place zone, when it was rezoned, the intention was to accommodate and regulate a medium density residential subdivision adjacent to established residential neighborhoods. So if you look at the layout on the left-hand side of the screen, what we're talking about here is a very minor variance by nature. It is the red circled oval. To the right of that is Nielsen Place. You can see there's 2 lots, lot 1 in the bottom left corner and lot 2 in the bottom right corner. So the applicant requires a relaxation to the minimum frontage requirements for proposed lots 1 and 2. Currently, lot 2 will be accessed directly from Nielsen Place, whereas lot 1 would have no direct access and would require an easement. And this easement would run across lot 2 to provide access to Nielsen Place. In the table there, you can see currently it's estimated that they'll have a frontage of 8.5 meters, whereas after the calculations of the perimeter, they would need frontage of 10.5 meters. So we're looking to relax this frontage requirement from 10.5 to 8.5, and also from 9 meters for lot 1 down to 0 meters. When the planning department are looking at development variance permits of this nature, we look at a number of different considerations, such as vehicle access, both personal and emergency. The frontage for lot 2 allows for a personal vehicle, and we have contacted referral to Tofino Volunteer Fire Department. They have no cause for concerns. The neighborhood design is another consideration, or form and character. And staff's opinion is that lots 1 and 2 are unlikely to negatively impact the neighborhood design, form or character. And then lastly, we look at environmental impacts. So just above lot 1 and 2 in the bottom left corner is going to be lot 3, and there is a natural vegetation buffer that runs across that easement. The intention is for the applicant to keep that natural vegetation buffer. So no cause for concerns or alarming to staff. Just to touch on the statutory authority. So section 512 part 2 of the Local Government Act allows a local government to exempt a parcel from the minimum highway frontage requirements set out by a bylaw. And then part 3 of that section also allows for a local government to delegate the exemption powers to an approving officer. So in the case of the District of Tofino, we have not delegated that authority to an approving officer, which is why I'm here today. And also you would have seen highway referred to throughout the report and also in this presentation. So highway is defined by the Highway Act, and for the purpose of this presentation and the report, Nielsen Place is considered a highway. And just to be specific, we are looking to vary part 21 of the District of Tofino Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw, number 1201, adopted in 2014, and this is to permit for a frontage of less than 10% the parcel perimeter for lots 1 and 2 of a proposed subdivision. This is for 65 Nielsen Place. Also, according to the Local Government Act, we must issue a public notice to residential properties and property owners within a 60-meter buffer zone. So this was completed around middle of January. We didn't have any cause for concerns. I had a couple of conversations with community members and neighboring properties, more so around the allowable uses in this NP zone, but no concerns or issues noted. And with that, I have a recommendation before council. I'm happy to take any questions. Help of staff, perhaps. Okay.
Super. Thank you, Mr. Shortall. Sounds pretty straightforward. Any questions for Mr. Shortall? Seeing none, comments? Comments? Yes,
I wanted to get the recommendation down.
That was my next thing.
Yeah.
Would you like to read the
I would
recommendation?
love to, yeah, that council approved development variance permit number 0125, a very part 21 of District of Tofino Subdivision Development Control Bylaw, number 1201, 2014, to permit a frontage of less than 10% of the parcel perimeter for lots 1 and 2, the proposed subdivision for lot B, plan EPP 86730, district lot 115, Blackwood Land District, as shown on Exhibit A to DVP 01-25.
Seconded by Councilor McMaster. Any further comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. All right, let's move on to bylaws. We have the 11.1. We have District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Amendment Bylaw.
Mayor Law, just for the record, that should be stated as 10.3.
Oh, sorry, this is not changed. Sorry, I've thought about that. It didn't get actually printed. Okay, sorry. You're 10.3.
10.3, got it.
For the record.
I forgot my agenda.
Followed by 10.4.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So yeah, today I'm here to talk to you about just an amendment to our fire and life safety bylaw. The remote's not working. There we go. Oh, that's the one. Okay, so this amendment addresses 3 different areas. There's an update in legislation, an update to our compensation for firefighters, and then there's an addition of some considerations for private fire hydrants. In terms of legislation, in August of 2024, the province introduced the Fire Safety Act through the Office of the Fire Commissioner. And so this amendment will, one of the main updates to the act is that by bylaw, we're required to designate a fire inspector and a fire investigator. And so this amendment does that. And then the amendment also essentially replaces references to the old act with references to the new act. So replacing Fire Services Act, Fire Safety Act. For compensation in 2021, the fire department introduced a paid duty weekend structure. And so basically for every summer weekend and holiday weekend, we were paying 1 officer and 1 engineer to be available on call. The thing with that is the compensation for that was $450 per person per weekend, but it only covered from Friday at 6 p.m. until Monday at 8 p.m., potentially leaving a gap on the holiday Friday or the holiday Monday. And so this amendment sort of covers those gaps, and it also allows it compensates the firefighters on call for the time that they're staying on call, essentially. So you get paid a little more for a long weekend. You still get $450 for a regular 2-day weekend. And then for those holidays on like single days, like Truth and Reconciliation is landed midweek this week or this year. So you just get paid for the 1 day, essentially. And then finally, there's a provision to increase these rates annually in line with CPI. And that's just to keep me from coming back here every 2 years to update our compensation. And then finally, private hydrants. So the BC Fire Code already requires hydrants to be inspected annually, but this amendment ensures that we receive reports of the inspections and those kinds of things. Of course, the big benefit for that is that district staff can also use that to help prevent leaks and track water usage a little bit better. And those reports can be submitted voluntarily by the businesses, or they can be collected by our fire inspector during his routine inspections, or their routine inspections, I should say. Yeah, oh, thought I deleted that, and there's my recommendation.
You go back there, let's see that. Is it a great report?
Yeah,
More slides.
Yeah,
That's great. Okay, thanks.
yeah. Any questions?
Let's question.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm just curious, Mark. How many private hydrants do we have in the district out of curiosity?
That's a good question. I would say, I mean, a rough guess is maybe a dozen or so. I know Pacific Sands has 3 or 4. The Q&amp has 2 or 3. So some of those larger resorts have a few hydrants on site. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. supportive. So, any other further comments from council? No? All right. Somebody like to read the recommendation?
I can move the District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Amendment Bylaw number 1311-01 2025 for first, second, and third.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Back in there before you there, Master. Any further comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Super. Moving right on to 10.4, which is the official community plan bylaw. This later.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As the title suggests on this slide, I'll be discussing the OCP amendment bylaw for first and second reading related to considering staff accommodation development in the ocean interface designation. So I'm going to start with a bit of a refresher on what has led us to the consideration of this OCP amendment bylaw before you today. Staff received 2 unrelated zoning amendment applications in 2023 for staff housing located in the ocean interface land use designation. One at 1211 Pacific Rim Highway for about 31 beds of dorm style housing specific for Wickininish Inn staff, and another at 1141 Pacific Rim Highway, also known as the Crabapple Campground, for 17 modular buildings containing 5 sleeping units each, intended for local businesses in general. Both applications received permission to proceed with further review in October of 2023 and rely on the proposed OCP amendment before you today for adoption by council. So a bit more context. As you know, the OCP is the district's primary policy guide for land use decision making, and all zoning amendment bylaws adopted by council must be consistent with the OCP when viewed as a whole. Upon initial review of the 2 housing zoning amendment applications, staff concluded that while generally consistent with the overall intent of the OCP, very strong language in general policies of the OCP prohibited development of any kind outside of the village core, rubbed up against permissive language for staff housing in the ocean interface designation. And as a result, staff deemed it was necessary for a text amendment to clarify the original intent of the OCP to support staff housing in the ocean interface in principle and enable the consideration of the zoning applications without concern that a decision for approval of these applications would be inconsistent with the OCP. Council granted staff permission to proceed with further review of this OCP amendment in September of 2023, and since then staff have drafted specific text changes and conducted community consultation. So for a bit more spatial context, this slide shows the OCP land use designations that are depicted in Schedule A of the OCP. The thicker black line surrounding the downtown area at the tip of the peninsula is what we call the village containment boundary, which generally delineates the area within which the majority of future development should be concentrated. And the ocean interface designation is shown in blue, surrounding the Mackenzie Beach / North Chesterman area and the Cox Bay area. So here I want to talk a little bit about the intent of the OCP amendment. In my opinion, as a planner, the proposed changes are meant to clarify the original intent of the OCP as it relates to development outside of the village containment area and not open up development indiscriminately. Staff housing is already explicitly supported in the ocean interface designation, but is negated by language elsewhere in the OCP. Rather unintentionally negated by language elsewhere in the OCP. In this way, staff view the amendment more as a minor housekeeping amendment, which would have been addressed during a routine OCP update every 5 years. But because we've received a specific application in the meantime, this is why staff are reviewing this amendment now. So the objectives of the proposed OCP amendment can be summarized as follows. 1, to improve OCP legibility for clear and consistent interpretation, to enable the consideration of the 2 associated zoning amendments without concern that an approval would be inconsistent with the OCP. And finally, to support community housing needs while maintaining the overall intent of the OCP to limit and discourage growth outside of the village core. So this slide shows the actual text amendments that are being proposed. Staff conducted a thorough review of the OCP to identify the specific policy language that prevented the consideration of the associated applications. And in the end, amendments are necessary for only 3 existing policy statements, which are shown in the table. So the first 2 there, existing policies 3911 and 4125 are the 2 main policy statements, again, in my opinion, preventing the consideration of development outside of the village core. And the proposed amendment text in red are intended to soften this language just enough while maintaining the overall intent of the OCP to discourage and limit growth outside of the core. So a little bit about consultation. Typically, the development of OCPs or OCP amendments require a heightened level of public consultation in line with legislative requirements of the LGA, and requires that council consider appropriate consultation opportunities with a variety of stakeholder groups. However, where OCP amendments are deemed minor, as in this case, staff have delegated authority through the recently adopted Development Application Procedures Bylaw number 1331 to determine appropriate consultation requirements. And in line with this delegated authority, and in consideration of the minor nature of this amendment, staff opted for a consultation scope, which included referrals to a full list of internal and external agencies. We conducted a public information meeting. We developed a Talk Tofino webpage with information that lives on it, and the sort of additional step that will be proceeded should council adopt or decide to move forward with the proposed amendment is a public hearing. So this slide just shows a list of the external and internal referrals that we sent notification to. Just notably, external referrals included the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation and neighboring jurisdictions, including the ACRD and Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. So here's a summary of the responses received through the referral process. Overall, there was general support for the proposal as a mechanism to support the community's housing needs. Of note, Pacific Rim National Park Reserve raised concerns about possible impacts to the Cox Cone informal trail network, sort of at the south end of Cox Beach there, Cox Bay Beach. And their concern was if visitation increases as the result of new development. Staff acknowledged the importance of mitigating impacts to the nearby National Park Reserve, though it is difficult to determine whether the OCP amendment proposal would cause a change in density and visitation in the area, and suggest it may be more appropriate to assess impacts like these on a project-by-project basis and subsequently through zoning amendment applications. The other general comment raised by District Public Works and Infrastructure, who noted the general limitations to servicing infrastructure in the southern portion of the district, though it was noted that required servicing improvements would be considered through zoning amendment processes. Here's a little snapshot of the public information meeting setup. We held it on May 14th, 2024 in the former council chambers. It was sparsely attended. One person came out. No concerns were raised. So that brings me really to a summary of our analyses and key takeaways. When we compile all of our analyses and look at the implications of the proposed amendment, some of the main considerations that come to light are thus. The proposed amendments do not change the intent of the OCP. Instead, they aim to clarify. As a result, it's difficult to measure or anticipate area-specific or broader community impacts directly related to the proposal due to its minor nature. The general approach to growth and development outside of the village core will remain the same, which is that it is generally discouraged, except in exceptional circumstances like staff housing in the ocean interface, and that infrastructure capacity, hazard risk exposure, and environmental impacts will still be key considerations during zoning processes. And finally, approval of the OCP amendments does not oblige council to approve the two related zoning amendment applications. Project-specific development review will continue to be carried out at the zoning amendment stage against all relevant OCP and district policies, including things like housing needs report, limits to growth policy, etc. Brings me to next steps. Should council desire to proceed with first and second readings, there are some statutory obligations that are required before adoption, primarily related to holding a public hearing prior to third reading. And then, of course, the two related zoning amendments would also be moved through the process more or less concurrently, though final approval of those zoning amendments are not possible unless, or rather until the OCP amendment is adopted. That brings me to the recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate your here. I'm going to open it up for questions for Mr. Later. The question now. Anything from the council? Questions for Claire? I have one. It's just about the tsunami inundation removal of that one clause there. I wonder just if you could explain to me how council can be assured that, you know, when these applications come forward, that is still a vital aspect of reviewing the appropriateness of developments within a risky zone.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the question, Mayor Law. I actually have a teaser or an additional slide that sort of speaks to some additional language that would be considered during zoning amendments. But I think, in my opinion, there's a level of comfort to strike that sort of tsunami risk clause, because there is additional very general policies within the OCP that can be relied upon to require further investigation on risks related to tsunami and mitigation measures. So this particular clause to be removed is specifically within the ocean interface land use designation. But I guess, as I said, there's additional policy statements outside of that OCP interface policy section that more generally speak to a discouragement or requirement to sort of mitigate those impacts. Yeah.
My question, Councillor Steer.
Yeah, it's very, and I don't think we need to elaborate any further because that was my exact question as well. But partly my question was referring to, is there any way, I know through the zoning amendment process that those concerns will come up at those particular, but I'm wondering if it's still not important to have some form of language within the OCP. You've struck the whole ensure any future development is directed to spaces outside tsunami inundation areas, but within you mentioned within the rationale, within there some potential language that may be included instead of the a struck statement, and I'm wondering if that was considered or you're relying on the support within other areas of the OCP. I just think it's important that we have wording that would ensure that, rather than relying on the general areas that you've indicated throughout the OCP.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question, Councillor Steer, and I think this is. It definitely was a consideration when sort of analyzing the existing OCP policies that required amendment, and I certainly don't take the necessity to ensure sort of risk mitigation from a tsunami perspective lightly. And I am fairly confident that that the existing policy elsewhere in the OCP does not preclude ourselves from asking for those additional requirements through zoning amendment processes. Yeah, I feel like I'd like maybe a bit of time to sort of back up what I said and sort of ensure and provide some peace of mind for you. And I'm confident I can do that. Off the top of my head, a little challenging, but yeah, I do hear your comment.
Super. Thank you. Now, maybe what we'll do is we'll let you off the hook. And if council has any comments, maybe council doesn't even have any comments, but let's open it up for council. If council wants to comment, I will start at the right hand of the table and work our way down.
No comment.
Councilor Mastery.
We need housing. That's the basic thing. So.
Councilor Sloman.
Yeah, not really any.
Okay. Councilor Steer.
No comments.
Okay. Councilor Thomas. Nothing. Okay. I've heard a lot of support from certain business community at large. So let's move on to the recommendation.
Sure, I can move that the District of Tofino official communal plan amendment bylaw number 1290-01 be introduced and read a first and second time.
Councilor Anderson, second. Further comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Later. Okay, I believe that's 10.4, moving on to unfinished business. Seeing none, business initiated by council members. Do we have any? Councilor Steer.
Yeah, just a couple. First is I'd like to just inform council that I'll bring a notice of motion to, and I had it written down, but I couldn't find it. I believe it's the February 11th council meeting regarding a community alcohol strategy. I'd like a quick update, and I think you touched on the Wiccan Community School and the swim lessons. We had the board meeting January the 22nd, and that was definitely talked about and great support. And as Mayor Law pointed out, a really great asset to the communities, and having that space and the staff to be able to do that was reiterated at that meeting. A few different things. Our community slots are well filled. The District of Tofino has we've now got space there, I believe, that we're renting. And I believe that's after 4:30, after programming Wiccan Community School. There was a little after 5, thank you. And so that was great. And that's a lot of that is supporting the TFN's basketball program there as well. So lots of good news there. There was a grant that was, and I believe it was through Redfish, the parent advisory committee, and it was around an outdoor education. There was some money that was available there, and it's going to be directed towards outdoor education materials and accessories. What that's going to look like exactly hadn't been delineated by staff there, but it would look like super positive work going on there. I think that was all the relevant ones to the District of Tofino, other than the work on the ball fields out there, which the community school or the fields, when they had the folks out there, they were enjoying that space as well. And I'll end it off with just a quick at ACRD Committee of the Whole. There was conversations, lots of conversation. We're right there, right in the middle of a budget process. So lots of things relative to the district from the district perspective. And I'll bring that up. We're going to meet tomorrow, and I'll bring forward a much more detailed report at our next council meeting.
Super. Councilor Thomas.
Councillor McMaster and I will be bringing a notice motion forward in February 11th meeting as well, in regards to accessible parking. Making accessible parking more accessible.
Accessible parking more accessible.
That's not how it's phrased in the notice of motion, but it's catchy.
Great, thank you. Okay, Councilor Sloman.
I had a meeting with each committee, and we did our events, grants, evaluations, and our arts and culture evaluations as well. So those will be coming to council.
Super. Excellent. Any other business initiated by council? Thing no. All right, moving on. Ms. Pocat. Question period.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for questions. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can now use the Q&A function. Before asking a question, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. No questions, Mayor.
Super, thank you. Then we're going to move on to item 15, which is to move into the closed session. Do I have a volunteer? Maybe a new. Who hasn't? No? Yeah, Councilor Anderson.
I'm scratching my head.
Okay,
Trying to farm out the.
Okay, I'll read it. I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C, and I guess that's I.
L.
It is L, okay. And 92B of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or being considered for a position as an officer, employee or agent, employee relations, discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98, annual municipal report, and consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or a federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Seconded by Councilor Thomas. First up,